In this video I'll be showing you how to pick up the stitches for the sleeves for a top-down sweater, in particular focusing on picking up the stitches in the underarm gusset and picking them up in such a way that you don't end up with holes at the corners between the underarm gusset stitches that have been cast on and the stitches that have been placed on waste yarn. So I've already put the stitches that were on waste yarn onto the needles, and I'm ready to start picking up the stitches. Now, most patterns actually instruct you to pick up the stitches starting here, pick up these stitches, and then pick up the underarm stitches, and they usually tell you to only pick up exactly the number that you cast on. When you do that, you actually end up with quite large holes at the corners. And also you end up not starting at the start of the round because they tell you to put a marker in the middle of these cast on stitches, and that's your start of round. So you've picked up, these ones have been knit more than these ones. It's a fine point, but I think it's better to start in the middle of the round and then pick up an extra one here to close the gap, knit around, pick up an extra one to close the gap, and then knit the last half. And then the very next round, decrease out these extra stitches, because obviously you'll have, if you've picked up one that they didn't tell you to, you'll have too many stitches on the needles. All right, so in this particular sweater, actually I'll show you, this is the second sleeve. The first sleeve is over here. I'll show you, this is where I've picked up the stitches, and I've picked up ones at the corners as well. And then you can see here I've decreased with a knit two together there, and then a slip knit here. And I haven't woven in the ends yet, so I don't have any big holes at the end. I have sort of slightly enlarged stitches at the corners, and so when I weave in the ends, I'll tidy them up a little bit. Okay, so for this size, my size, I was instructed to cast on 10 stitches underneath the arm. So I'm going to count those 10, and then I'm going to leave the first 5 and pick them up at the end, and I'm going to start at number 6. That's where I'll join my yarn. So when you're counting the stitches that were cast on, these are the ones here that are the stitches. So this is 1. You can see it's the first sort of loopy. This was the backwards loop cast on. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That was the last one there. So if that's 10, I'll go count backwards. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. That's going to be my first one, and I won't just pick up one strand of yarn, I'll pick up 2. You always pick up 2 loops so that you don't end up with a hole where you're picking up those stitches. So I'm just going to check. That's number 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so they're my first 5, and this is the first one of my second 5. So I've got my yarn ready to go, and I'm actually going to leave a really long tail because I want to use that to weave in the ends later, and I don't want to feel like I'm running short of yarn. That will allow me to close up any gaps. Okay, so I'll take this needle out. That's where I'm going to start my round. Okay, so it was that one there. And then I just wrap the yarn around the needle and pull through. So that's 1. Got to grab both strands. So not just, it looks like 2 strands of yarn, but that's actually because I'm knitting with yarn held double. I'm holding 1 strand of Madelinetosh Pashmina, which is a sport weight yarn, and 1 strand of a Katia concept silk mohair. That gives it a nice fuzzy effect. So that's actually only 1 strand. You know, that's only 1 to pick up. I need both loops. So then that's number 2, 3. See, get that out of the way. 3, 4, and 5. And then you can see that, now I'm going to be magic looping this, so I'll just pull out the loop. All right, so I'm just going to turn my work ready to go to see where am I going to pick up that extra, because I'm about to start knitting the first half of these stitches, but I want to pick up one, because if I just start knitting straight here, you can see there's a really large gap there, okay, and that you're going to end up with quite a big hole. So in working out where to pick up that stitch, what you want to do is when you actually sort of pull up, I don't want to, if I pull up like that, I can see I'm going to get quite a large hole, so I don't want to pick that up, and preferably if I can get two. But if I put it in there, can you see that that's actually reasonably well anchored in there? In there, too big a hole. In there, sort of not, perhaps not quite close enough to the needle, whereas in here, that's pretty much halfway between the last cast on stitch and the first one that was that's on the needles. So that's my extra one that I've picked up. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were from the cast on, one extra, and then I'm going to knit all the way around until I get back to the other half, and I'll do I'll just join that video to this one. So I've almost finished picking up the stitches that were already on the needles on the sleeve. I've knit around the ones on the first side, done magic loop, and am coming back and knitting just the last couple before I get to my cast on stitches. So here are the last, or that were the first 5 that were cast on, so they're the last 5 that I have to pick up. And this one here, this is the first one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to pick up this one here, and I'll pick up both strands of yarn, and then I want to pick up one that's in between these two, and I definitely don't want to pick up just one strand of yarn. I'd like to pick up 2 strands so that I can end up with and if I pull those 2 up, it looks like I'm not going to end up with a big hole. So I'll knit those 2. I'll knit under those 2 strands to create a stitch, and then I'm ready to start my first one here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, didn't quite get that one. And to make sure I've got both strands of yarn, seeing I'm holding the yarn held double. Okay, so that's it, that's the last one, and this here was the first one. So now I actually have 2 extra stitches on the needle, so I do need to decrease away those stitches. And where should I do that? Well, I want to do it around where the stitch was cast on, not exactly at the middle of the I'd like to do it close to where the gap was, where I created that extra one. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is the extra one. I want to decrease these 2 together to help close that gap a little bit. So I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll do a knit 2 together, and that's a right leaning decrease. Then when I come back around on the other side, I'll knit until I have 6 stitches left, so that I'm doing the same thing. There'll be 4 stitches that are not decreased, and then it's the 5th and 6th that will get decreased into a knit 2 together. So I'll knit until I've got 6 stitches left, and then do a slip slip knit, and then knit the last 4. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll knit the 4th and the 5th together, the last cast on, and then the one that I just, the extra stitch that I made, and then I'll knit around to the last 6 stitches. So at the start of the round, I knit the 5th and 6th stitches together. Now I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 stitches to go. So I'll knit until I've got 6 stitches left, and then I'll do a left leaning decrease here. So it's slip, slip, both of those have been slip as if to knit individually, and then I knit them through the back loop. So those 2, and then the last 4. And then now that's closed up the majority of that. You don't have a big hole there. And then when I weave in the ends, I'll just tighten up a little bit around that section. So I'm going to weave in the ends on the first sleeve. So I just get a large tapestry needle that has a large eye and is blunt, and I'll fold the yarn over, just compress it and thread the needle. And then this is, this gap here, it's really not that bad. There's not a lot to close up. And then here's the other side. So I'm going to just weave across here. There's nothing to close up here, but I need to get the tail of yarn from the middle over to the side. And in doing this, I'll also strengthen that underarm gusset just by having a few extra stitches there. Well, not stitches so much as threads of yarn. It doesn't matter at this stage, like, because you're weaving in the ends, you can pierce the yarn. So see how it's kind of a little bit large around here. So I'll just go in under these purl bumps here. And come up here. And come around. There's no sort of 100% way to do this. You just, as you do it, you sort of see, oh, it looks like I'm closing it up a little bit. And I'm also just adding a little bit of extra yarn to sort of fill in the holes a bit. Come that way. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. That looks pretty well closed up there. And then I'll go across the top. Might even turn my work around because it's a little easier for me to come at it from the other direction. I think we all have a certain way of weaving in ends. It's easier for us to go one way rather than another. So I'm just making my way across to the other side. But again, there's not really a lot to do because we did pick up that extra stitch. So it's sort of around here that I want to close up. And sort of a little bit up here. Because the stitches are all coming in different directions, you sort of have to go around a little bit. You've sort of got some going this way, some going this way, because obviously we're coming at it from different parts of our body. Oops, I'll just pull that out. So that looks okay, I think, there. That's closed up there, and it's closed up that hole there. I will snip that off later, just like, I never snip it right close to the, where I've finished. I'll snip it off a little bit, and just so it doesn't pull through onto the other side. And I'll show you from the other side. So we already saw this at the beginning. This is the first sleeve, going that way. And that's pretty well closed up. There's holes under the arms at all.